My first life as Cassandra Vane, Chief Systems Architect of Vanethorn Innovations, was a masterpiece built on a lie. I had engineered the Nexus Core, a revolutionary self-optimizing AI framework that was poised to turn our small firm, co-founded with my fiancé Julian Thorne, into a global behemoth overnight. The night I lost it all felt like a movie, cliché in its cruelty. It was a cold, late October evening. Julian and my younger sister Serena, whom I had groomed since she graduated, had waited until I finalized the global patent submission. I was dizzy with exhaustion and triumph, celebrating with a single glass of champagne in the plush, silent executive lounge of our Chicago headquarters. Julian entered first, his face a mask of regret that I now knew was pure performance. "Cassie, I'm so sorry. It had to be done." Then Serena followed, her eyes hard and cold, devoid of the familiar warmth of kinship. "You were too slow, Cassie. Too sentimental. You wanted to give the world access. We want to own it." They had used a loophole in the co-founder agreement, a carefully constructed clause Julian had insisted upon for future-proofing, that allowed the remaining co-founders, in the event of one's permanent incapacitation or death, to legally transfer all IP rights to the survivor. My glass of champagne hadn't been congratulatory. It was poisoned. I remember the searing, paralyzing cold that spread through my veins. The final humiliating act was watching Julian, my soon-to-be husband, and my sister, the person I had protected since childhood, sign the transfer documents, their pens scratching loudly in the absolute silence of my dying breath. I died on the floor, my face against the smooth, cold Italian marble, my Nexus Core, my life's work, stolen before it could even launch. But instead of the endless dark, I woke up. It was 7 p.m., the same cold October night. I was in my private office, the taste of metallic residue already on my tongue, the untouched glass of poisoned champagne glittering on my desk. The betrayal was scheduled for 9 p.m. 2 hours. In that first, frantic rebirth, panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. I knew Julian's power, the speed with which he and Serena could execute their theft. I needed a fortress, a weapon, an entity so vast and cold that they wouldn't dare challenge it. I needed Marcus Kalin. Marcus was the CEO of Kalin Global Systems, KGS, a corporate titan who ruled the financial sector with an iron fist and an infamous reputation for ruthless efficiency. He was Julian's most feared rival, a man carved from granite and logic. I had despised him in my first life for his inhuman ambition, but now he was my only salvation. I used the encrypted emergency line, the one meant for systems failure, to reach him. My proposal was stark and brutal. I have the Nexus Core. Julian Thorne is about to kill me and steal it. Marry me in the next hour, and I give you 49% of the patent and the full legal right to destroy the Thorne name. I want vengeance, Marcus. I want a shield. Marcus Kalin didn't ask about the time travel or the poison. He only asked 2 questions. Is the Nexus Core viable? And is the paperwork clean? By 8:30 p.m., Marcus's private jet was waiting, and by 8:45 p.m., a specialized high-security legal team had solemnized the marriage and filed the emergency documents, invoking the immediate marital conflict clause that froze all Vanethorn assets, including the co-founder agreement. The revenge was swift, surgical, and absolute. Julian and Serena walked into the executive lounge at 9 p.m. only to find me, alive, wearing a new wedding ring, and flanked by Kalin Global Systems' legal phalanx. The Nexus Core was protected by an impenetrable wall of Marcus's legal might. Julian and Serena were ruined, destroyed, and faced lengthy legal battles that reduced them to corporate dust. I won the war. I became Mrs. Cassandra Kalin, the architect of KGS, and co-ruler of the global tech sector. I was safe. I was powerful. I was utterly alone. Our marriage was a perfect, terrifying ecosystem. Marcus was a man of cold, methodical excellence. He valued me as his greatest asset. He gave me an entire division to run, limitless resources, and treated me with an unwavering, respectful distance. We shared a penthouse, but our life was compartmentalized into professional efficiency. Our conversations revolved around market share, systemic risk, and optimizing the flow of capital. There was never an uncalculated touch, never a conversation about dreams, and never a quiet moment of just being. I thrived professionally, my genius reaching new heights under the Kalen banner. But I was emotionally starving. I had traded a vibrant, albeit false, love for a powerful, absolute certainty. The granite fortress protected my body and my work, but it slowly strangled my soul. I was a queen on a frozen, sterile throne. 7 years passed in a blur of acquisitions and engineering breakthroughs. The Nexus core was a legend. Cassie Kalen was a legend. Then she returned, Vivian. Vivian was Marcus's great, heartbreaking love from his college years. A passionate, free-spirited humanitarian who had left him because she couldn't tolerate the cold ruthlessness required for his ascent. Marcus had never mentioned her, but I sensed her absence in the way he retreated into work on holidays, in the almost painful precision of his life. Vivian re-entered his life not as a competitor, but as a potential recipient of KGS's vast charitable fund. She was still messy, still warm, and still everything Marcus had brutally cut out of his life to become the CEO. And to my astonishment, the granite man began to thaw. He started missing late-night meetings. He began smiling at his phone, not with the predatory smirk of a successful predator, but with a soft, almost wistful expression. He bought a house, a small historic place outside the city, that he never told me about. It was a place for Vivian, a place for softness, a place utterly divorced from the Kalen Empire. The second betrayal, the quietest and deepest, came one sunny afternoon in our perfectly organized, emotionless penthouse. I was reviewing the annual budget, and he stood opposite me, looking out at the city we had conquered together. "I'm leaving, Cassandra," he said, his voice flat, devoid of anger or excitement, just pure clinical finality. Closed my tablet. My heart didn't break. It simply froze solid. The contract is perpetual, Marcus. The legal obligations bind us until one of us is deceased. You have no cause. I have cause for a divorce, not an annulment of the contract, he corrected, ever the strategist. The Kalen-Vane union is legally sound, and your assets are protected. The Nexus core is locked within the KGS holding structure. You are the CEO of your division and you have my backing for life. You are perfectly secure, Cassandra. He turned and his eyes, usually metallic, held a strange, sad softness. But I cannot be your husband anymore. I promised you a partner in this life and I have failed. You are my most valuable strategic asset, my greatest ally. But I cannot offer you my soul. I gave that up a long time ago and now I have a chance to claim it back. Vivian needs a life, not a strategy. And you, Cassandra. He looked at me, his perfect partner, and delivered the ultimate cut. You are too much strategy and too little life. You deserve a man who sees you as a sanctuary, not as a crown jewel. I'm sorry I couldn't be that man. He had fulfilled the contract perfectly, but he had betrayed the implicit promise of partnership. He had saved me from death, only to leave me in a colder kind of exile. My brilliant, calculated life was meaningless. I was the richest, safest, most powerful, and most alone woman in the world. The divorce was meticulous. I was untouched financially, but absolutely devastated emotionally. I realized my mistake had been profound. I chose the iron shield of power over the soft acceptance of love. My revenge was complete, but my heart was bankrupt. I lived another 10 years in that sterile empire, eventually dying quietly in the fortress I had built. My last thoughts were not of the Nexus core, but of the warmth I had seen in Jude's eyes. The one person I knew would have chosen me, the messy, flawed woman, over any empire. Reese Sterling, my best friend. I woke up gasping, the metallic taste of poison back on my tongue, the clock on my desk reading 7 p.m., October 15th. The betrayal was scheduled for 9 p.m. The same day. The same hour. A second rebirth, a terrifying divine mercy. But this time, the first betrayal, Julian and Serena's theft, was a dull, predictable echo. The fresh, lacerating wound was Marcus Kalen's cold dismissal. You are too much strategy and too little life. That was the true ruin. The decision was instantaneous. I would not repeat the Kalen mistake. I would not exchange my emotional future for an iron shield. I needed a partner whose loyalty was woven into his soul, not into a contract. I needed the man who had always seen the me beneath the genius. I ignored the sleek, black secure line designed for corporate titans. I grabbed my personal cell and scrolled down to the only name that mattered. Reese Sterling. Reese was my anchor. He was an incredibly talented but self-effacing corporate law specialist who had deliberately chosen to work for nonprofits and social good initiatives. He was grounded, intensely loyal, and possessed a quiet strength that felt like the earth beneath my feet, not a towering, cold spire. He had been there for every high and low, always seeing Julian for the snake he was, always offering an ear and a home-cooked meal, never judging my ambition, and always loving me silently from the sidelines. I knew he loved me because, in my first 2 lives, I had carelessly taken that love for granted. I dialed his number. He answered with the easy, familiar sound of his voice. Cassie. Hey, I was just about to text you. Are you finally done with the patent filing? Come over, I'm making your terrible mac and cheese. I couldn't hold back the tears. The sound of his everyday normalcy, his simple, unwavering care, shattered the 7 years of cold silence with Marcus. Reese. I choked out, fighting for control. I need you. I need you right now. Please. Meet me at the Botanical Gardens. The little fountain near the West Gate. Don't tell anyone. Don't ask questions. Please, Reese, my entire life depends on you being there in 20 minutes. There was a pregnant silence, not of confusion, but of absolute, immediate prioritization. I'm leaving now, Cassie. Don't move. I'll be there. Reese arrived out of breath, wearing a comfortable hoodie and jeans. His brown eyes wide with confusion and alarm. He wasn't the powerful figure Marcus Kalen was, but the raw kindness emanating from him felt like the sun. He didn't demand explanations. He simply took my shaking hands in his. What happened? You're trembling. Did Julian finally pull something? I couldn't lie to him, not this time. I looked into his eyes, and I told him the impossible truth. Not just the betrayal scheduled for 9 p.m., but the 7 years with Marcus Kalen, the cold empire, and the crushing realization that power had failed me. It sounds insane, I know, I whispered, tears finally flowing freely. But I have the memories of 2 lives. Julian and Serena are waiting right now to poison me and steal the Nexus core at 9. In my first response, I married Marcus Kalen for his power, and he destroyed them, but he left me years later because he needed a soul, not a strategy. Reese, I don't want Marcus's power. I don't want the fortress. I want the truth. I want you. I pulled out the legal documents I had prepared on my flight, the emergency marriage certificate, the notice of conflict of interest, the full transfer of my 51% controlling share of Vainthorn Innovations into a new trust. The marital clause is the only thing that saves us in time. Julian's firm, Thorn Ventures, is a competitor to your legal practice, Sterling and Company. I need that legal shield, Reese. But I am not asking you for a contract of convenience. I'm asking you to trust a woman who failed to see you twice. I'm asking you to marry me because I realized that the only thing I ever needed was the kindness, the loyalty, and the home you have always offered me. I handed him the papers. The papers represented billions in assets and a lifetime of professional risk for his small social good firm. He looked at the documents, the chaos, the risk, the impossible demands, then crumpled them in his hand and dropped them on the bench. He didn't touch the papers. He only cupped my face with his warm, calloused hands. I believe you, Cassie. I don't know how, but I believe the terror in your eyes. I believe that Julian and Serena are monsters. And I believe that Marcus Kalen is not worthy of you. He paused, his gaze boring into my soul, intense and absolute. I don't want your patents, your assets, or your revenge. I want you. I have loved you since the day we met. You are choosing me not as a shield but as a person. That is the only contract I care about. He pulled me into a fierce, tender kiss, the first truly uncalculated kiss of my 3 lives. It wasn't the powerful, possessive kiss of Marcus, or the practiced, empty kiss of Julian. It was the kiss of home, of belonging, of a soft certainty that flowed into my frozen heart. We don't need the legal papers to tell us who we are, he murmured against my temple. But we need them to stop Julian. Let's go, my love. We have a villain to depose. We found a notary public in a coffee shop 2 blocks away and, with a simple exchange of vows and a signature on a document, I became Cassandra Sterling. There was no private jet, no phalanx of security, only the absolute, undeniable certainty of Reese's hand in mine. We arrived back at the Vainthorn Innovations headquarters at 8:58 p.m., just 2 minutes before the scheduled betrayal. Julian and Serena were still in the executive lounge, smiling, waiting for me to finish my celebratory champagne. Reese and I walked in hand. The sight of us, intertwined and utterly calm, stopped them cold. Julian sneered, dropping the practiced, sympathetic mask he wore. What in God's name? Reese Sterling. Get out, you 2-bit charity lawyer. We're in the middle of a private board meeting. I didn't speak. I simply held Reese's hand tighter and let him lead the charge. Mr. Thorne, Ms. Vane, Reese began, his voice low, firm and authoritative, radiating legal clarity. He wasn't cold. He was impeccably controlled. As of 8:45 p.m. tonight, Ms. Vane's legal name is Cassandra Sterling. Given my position as the managing partner of Sterling & Company, a direct competitor in the IP sector, the marriage invalidates the Vainthorn co-founder agreement's operational clause due to an insurmountable conflict of interest. Serena shrieked. The Nexus core is ours. The documents are prepared. Reese held up a single, crisp document, the marriage certificate. The transfer of IP is nullified, as the triggering condition of Ms. Vane's incapacitation did not occur. Furthermore, Mrs. Sterling has used her controlling majority stake to dissolve the existing operating board. I believe these documents, he produced the freeze order, will explain that your access to all assets is now restricted, pending a forensic audit led by the newly formed board of Sterling Vane Systems. Julian, the corporate viper, didn't panic. He lunged. But unlike the confrontation with Marcus, where Kaelin's security guards had moved like automatons, Reese simply stepped in front of me, not with force, but with a wall of legal conviction. Do not touch my wife, Mr. Thorne. This is no longer a corporate dispute. This is now a matter of documented theft and attempted fraud. I advise you to speak only with the authorities. The confrontation ended not with a dramatic show of force, but with the quiet, overwhelming power of law and truth. Julian and Serena, who had planned every tactical move, were blindsided by the one thing they hadn't anticipated. A choice made purely from the heart. They were arrested for conspiracy and fraud, their carefully laid plans falling into dust. As the police led them away, Julian looked back, his eyes full of pure, impotent hatred. You chose a pauper over Marcus Kaelin. You idiot. You've thrown away a dynasty for a cheap defense lawyer. I looked at Reese, and a wave of pure, grateful love washed over me, a feeling deeper and warmer than any billion-dollar deal. He's wrong, Julian, I whispered. I chose a soul over a throne. Reese turned, took my face in his hands, and kissed me deeply, silencing the chaos. You chose well, Cassie. I promise you, you chose well. The following year was the true test of our uncalculated marriage. We didn't merge into a colossal monolith like Kaelin Global Systems. We built a new structure from the ground up, Sterling Vane Systems. Reese oversaw the legal, ethical, and governance structures, ensuring the Nexus core was deployed for maximal societal benefit, not just profit. I focused on the technology. We were a perfect, balanced team. The greatest difference was in the architecture of our home life. There were no silent dinners in the penthouse overlooking the city. We lived in Reese's small, cozy house. We cooked together, debated ethics over slightly burnt dinners, and fell asleep with our legs tangled under a comforting, messy duvet. Reese never once made me feel like an asset. He made me feel like his beloved wife. I vividly recall a moment 6 months in. The corporate takeover was complete, the Nexus core was stable, and the media frenzy had died down. I had been working non-stop, running on the residual paranoia from my first 2 lives, convinced that the moment I slowed down the world would collapse. I found Reese at 3 a.m. in the kitchen, not working on legal briefs, but fixing a leaky faucet. "What are you doing up?" he asked, wiping grease from his hands. "I'm just finishing a system optimization on the Q-grid. Just 2 more hours," I replied, my voice tense. He put down his wrench and walked over, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the kitchen light. He pulled me gently into his arms. "Cassie, stop," he commanded, his voice firm but tender. "You are safe. Julian is in prison. Serena is ruined. KGS is a rival, not an enemy. You don't have to run from death anymore. The battle is over. You won not because you were the most strategic, but because you had the cleanest heart." He led me out of the office and into the living room, where he simply sat down, pulling me onto his lap. He didn't offer a professional solution or a scheduling plan, as Marcus would have. He offered silence, warmth, and acceptance. "You don't have to prove your worth to me," he whispered, stroking my hair. "Your worth is in the woman I married, not in the Nexus core. We have billions, but all I truly want is this: you relaxed in my arms, safe. Rest, my love. I'll stand guard." That night, I wept not from sadness, but from the sheer, overwhelming relief of being allowed to surrender the shield. I finally slept soundly, knowing that Reese's strength was not in his ability to conquer, but in his unwavering ability to sustain and cherish. Over the next few years, I learned to love the man I married in a rush of desperation. My love for Reese was not the blinding passion of a young girl's first infatuation, nor the calculated respect of a strategic alliance. It was a deep, abiding, and simple truth. It was the love of 2 souls who finally found their corresponding parts. He was my warmth, and I was his inspiration. He anchored me, and I gave him wings. When he looked at me, he didn't see the CEO, the architect, or the woman of 2 tragic pasts. He saw his wife. And in his eyes, I saw the beautiful, uncalculated future I had spent 2 lifetimes trying to buy with power. 5 years into our marriage, Sterling Vane Systems was not just successful. It was an industry force known for its ethical, human-centric approach to AI, a direct reflection of Reese's values blended with my genius. The Nexus core served as the foundation for global disaster relief systems and groundbreaking medical diagnostics, fulfilling the idealistic vision I had originally intended before Julian corrupted it. Marcus Kalin was still the undisputed king of the corporate world, often appearing in headlines with Vivian, whose humanitarian work he now funded lavishly. I felt no bitterness, only a quiet gratitude. Marcus and I were 2 titans of strategy who could never have shared a true life. He needed soft humanity, and I needed genuine, messy love. We were both happier on our respective paths. One cold Saturday morning I stood in our kitchen making pancakes, badly as always, while Reese, having run a marathon, walked in and kissed me, his skin warm and damp from the shower. "Smells like you're trying to burn down the house again, Mrs. Sterling," he teased, pulling the smoking skillet off the burner. "It's a design flaw in the batter," I retorted, leaning into his solid, familiar embrace. "I'm a structural genius, not a culinary one. And don't you dare fix the batter. I need to document this failure." He laughed, a rich, full sound that was the true soundtrack of my third life. He scooped me up and set me on the kitchen counter, fixing the pancakes while I watched. "You know, I was thinking about Kalin the other day," I confessed, watching the steam curl up from the batter. "I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had just stayed with him. I would be on a private island right now, probably designing the next Hyperloop system, cold and perfect." Reese paused, spatula in hand, and turned to look at me. His eyes were serious, full of the deep, uncomplicated love that made him my sanctuary. "You wouldn't be happy, Cassie. That's what would have happened. You would have had the perfect empire, but you would have starved. Marcus looked at you and saw the gold. I look at you and see the fire. The fire needs air, not a vault. I need you to be messy, to fail at pancakes, to argue ethics with me at 2 a.m. That's the design I want. He placed the finished golden brown pancakes in front of me, leaning down to capture my mouth in a slow, sweet kiss. You are my victory, Cassandra Vane Sterling. Not the Nexus core, not the billions. You choosing me, knowing the price of power and still choosing love. That was the most uncalculated, brilliant move of your life. I ate my perfect pancakes, tasting the comfort and certainty of a love earned not through strategy or exchange, but through unwavering loyalty and shared history. I had spent 2 lifetimes seeking a fortress of safety and a crown of power. In my third, I had simply chosen a home, and in that choice I found the strength to build an empire that finally felt right. I had been given a second chance. And this time I had chosen my soul.